Welcome on the AM show. Welcome back, I should be saying. We dig into our big stories as we have a conversation on another aspect of the Auditor General's report, focusing on academic programs. It reveals that some of the programs offered not just by the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, but the University of Ghana, among others, are not accredited. The details out that out of the 360 programs, for example, run by the University of Science and Technology, only 61 have been accredited. 190 have been sent to the National Accreditation Board for accreditation and re-accreditation, with about 109 yet to be sent to the NAB for accreditation. So we get into the dynamics. It then implies that a lot of our public institutions, even the most foremost ones, have actually been dishing out certificates that so-called may be invalid. So we get into that conversation with our guests this morning. Joining us for now, Kofi Asare, Executive Director, Africa Education Watch. We also have Dr. Peter Anti, Executive Director, Institute for Education Studies. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, and good morning to Peter.
Can I hear from Peter?
Yeah, good morning.
All right, so we have both of you. Let's start with that tough question. How did we get here? I mean, you would least expect in a list of institutions that would be dispensing freely certificates that maybe don't have the right accreditation, you would least expect to find two of our foremost institutions, the University of Ghana and the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, in there. But they are in there with hundreds of their programs actually without accreditation. How did we end up here? I'll start with Mr. Asare.
Well, good morning once again. I think there's a history to this. I remember during the tenure of Honorable Banredu and Honorable Yaosaf as Ministers of Education, it took a ministerial intervention to sort of whip most of these public institutions to accede to the processes of the then National Accreditation Board in respect of program and institutional, especially program accreditation. Let me indicate that there is a history because, unlike in other countries, our public institutions predate the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission and, by extension, the National Accreditation Board and then the National Council for Tertiary Education. So naturally, when the accrediting body was established, all existing institutions and the programs we were running had to be taken through accreditation. And so there has since been a backlog, okay? Apart from that, the growth or the demand for tertiary education leading to the growth in various programs has also led to a situation where some of the programs have not been duly accredited before tertiary institutions began running them. We need to differentiate between two types of accreditation here. There are programs that are yet to be re-accredited. For those ones, they have in the past been accredited for the 5-year period and the accreditations expired. So they have to apply for a renewal. Those ones are normally not too serious. The serious ones are the programs that have not been accredited at all and are now being, processed for accreditation. That is serious because you do not have any form of prior accreditation for a program. You advertise it, you admit students, take them through the program, and issue certificates. That is criminal, according to Section 36 of the Education Regulatory Bodies Law.
And you say that is criminal. So for you, Dr. Anti, the basis for the conversation has been set. We're talking about the GTEC, for example, but of course we know the National Accreditation Board has been in the fray. But the picture that is painted then means that this is a long-standing issue. What other dynamics do you see that are, creating this matter?
Okay, thank you, and good morning to your viewers. I think before I go there, I would want to continue from where Kofi ended. So you would also realize that there are 3 stages in accreditation. There is a there's institutional accreditation, then there's a program accreditation, and then there's re-accreditation. The problem we are having now is not about institutional accreditation. So you see that there are certain institutions that are running programs that they themselves, the institution themselves, they are not accredited to even do that. That is not the problem that we are having. And there are institutions that when you go to the online website of GTech, you see that they are not supposed to run programs that they are even running. The institution itself is not accredited. You go there, your certificate is not recognized anywhere. And then there are programs that need reaccreditation, that, as Kofi said. Then there are programs that need to be accredited before it is run. And that is where the problem is. What we picked from our conversation and little investigations that we've done is that, and of course, from experience working with a department within a university and knowing how the accreditation process works, is that GTech it's having issues with, there are 2 things. One is because the law was changed and Parliament passed the educational regulatory law that gave a little bit of, because by the time that this law came into being, the universities had a little lapse because there were no bodies to send your documents to. So that could be one of the reasons. Another one is that technically NAB is a small institution. They don't have the requisite staff. So they fall on professionals from the universities and other institutions to help them do the accreditation. And if you look at the number of programs that are being run by these public universities, you would see that there are a lot of them. And the accreditation process is so very much cumbersome. It is so tedious that it's back and forth. You send your document, they look at it, they make corrections, they send it back to you. You have to do those changes, let it go through the process, and then it is sent back to them. They have to send their staff to come and inspect your facilities, your resources, your staff strength, and everything within the department that you would want to run the program. Then they finally give you the needed accreditation for you to continue running the program. So because of the staff strength and the cumbersome nature of the process, it's always likely that there would be a delay. Another issue is that you cannot, and I've made this point since yesterday, you cannot ask a university to stop running a program when the program needs reaccreditation, because this is how it operates. After 5 years, you need to go for reaccreditation. Technically, you might have to start the process from, let's say, the 4th year. The process takes time. So if by the 5th year, you have not completed the process and the program is still running, the law insists that you should stop running the program. But this is where the problem comes, because you might have enrolled some people on the program already. You have academic staff that are already teaching the program. What you will succeed in doing is that you would have to now ask these students to pause. You would have to now ask these academic staff to stop teaching the program. You make them redundant. So the process has ended, and then you have the certificate before you can continue running the program. And for me, that is problematic. So that transition, I still believe and think that should be the authority should be given to enable the institutions still run the program whilst they go through the accreditation process. And that's why if you look at the documents, the Auditor General says that there are about over 100 documents that have been given to them in case of tech that needs to be looked at. And we cannot say that once these documents are with GTech, the institution should stop running the program. So these are the dynamics of the issues that have brought us to where we are. But I think that it's problematic, yes, but it's not so fatal, and I think it could be dealt with as early as possible.
Mr. Sari, so Dr. Anti says it is not fatal. It is not too fatal, as he puts it, but we know what the consequences could be. I want us to take the conversation from there. Two angles. One, and we've done a lot of checks on these matters before coming here. Our sources tell us, for example, that sometimes these institutions, the National Accreditation Board, the GTEC, are hobbled. Well, let's focus on the NAB. To the extent that sometimes they even fall on some university staff, tertiary institutions, to aid them in their work. That is the first angle to the conversation. But when you have already started dispensing a program, the difficulty is that, like Peter has mentioned, students are on the program, lecturers are on the program, and if at any point you have to bring an end to the program, awaiting accreditation, what happens to those who have spent hard cash to enroll on these programs? I mean, how do we find our way out of that?
Well, my experience dealing with accrediting bodies, especially in Ghana, is that no accrediting body has the capacity to hire a staff, experts that undertake the due diligence, certification, the standard testing and all that. So you always engage consultants. And I think that engaging consultants in the case of GTEC should not be a good enough reason for the delay. I have enough experience in these accreditation processes, in Ghana, to appreciate that sometimes the process takes too long, and that if we streamline the application, the due diligence and approval processes of accreditation requirements, we should be able to reduce the backlogs and then encourage people to apply. Sometimes I know institutions where the board has to meet and approve the accreditation. And sometimes it can take more than a year. And the board may have met, but the list of items on the plate of the board, may be so long that you have to wait until the third board meeting before your accreditation request is actually considered, So yes, we need to streamline the accreditation process. The waiting period will also have to be streamlined. Yesterday, I was on a program with Professor Salifu, the GTEC boss, and he indicated that institutions are normally advised to apply 1 year ahead of the expiration of program accreditation. That is in the case of reaccreditation. That alone should tell you that it is envisioned that it could take up to a year or more. And I think that if you look at the process outlined on the GTEC's own website about how to apply and then the process, it appears it's something that can take a month, but unfortunately it doesn't. So we need to adapt technology. Yesterday, the province of Legon mentioned that they are working on using technology to streamline the process, and the universities are engaging GTEC on this. It will be the best to adapt technological approaches, because I'm told that the approach is still manual. Perhaps if we, digitize the system of accreditation, it will speed up the process. But let me indicate that, yes, I agree with Peter that it may not be fatal. The fatalities occur when...
He says it will not be too fatal. Too fatal. Yeah. He qualifies it.
Yes, too fatal. The fatalities occur when the program is not, the issue is not about reaccreditation. As I mentioned, if it's reaccreditation, it is not too problematic, because a retroactive accreditation will obviously be given. It is envisioned. But if the program has not been accredited at all in the past, then you don't even know whether the program and its content, its design fit within the labor needs. I mean, when they are doing the accreditation, among others, they look at the extent to which the program responds to the need of the market and all that. What if your program doesn't conform to labor market needs and all that, and that the accreditation is denied? Any comment or any significant input that requires that you vary the structure and the content of that curriculum means that those you have trained already, who have graduated, are not, if you like, fully baked.
Okay, so Kofi, let me just hold you on a point there. Per our sources, it can take as long as 3 years for universities to get whether accreditation or re-accreditation, both ways. So look at it this way. A university is running a program and it needs re-accreditation. If it's going to take about 2 years, the universities must ensure that their programs are fresh, that they don't run obsolete. How do you deal with the situation, even if it has to do with a startup program, and you're waiting for 3 years for accreditation? So yes, it is criminal not to have accreditation and start a program per Act 1023, the Education Regulatory Bodies Act 2020. But on the other hand, when you look at the length of time that it takes to get there, does it not make sense for the institutions to take the lead in running the program even while they seek accreditation?
No, I think you are being tempted to reduce an aspect of the conversation to mean accreditation is just a process. It is not just a process. It is a quality assurance mechanism. The accrediting body must ensure that your training content meets the needs of industry. You are training people for the world of work, for instance. So there are quality assurance ingredients in the process, which can lead to the denial of your application, which can lead to proposals that will affect or cause an enhancement of your content or the entire curriculum and others. So don't see it as a process. It is not just a process. It's a quality assurance mechanism. So what if you went ahead and ran the program and it was denied? Then you've wasted people's time. It means that the program was not cut to fit, for the labor market. Don't forget that we have a problem with graduate unemployment, and we are always trying to align training content in our tertiary institutions to the labor market needs. So yes, if you are an industry player, I'm talking about a tertiary sector industry player, you should envision the length of time it takes to get at least partial. When I was working with CODVET has partial accreditation as part of its processes. I don't know if it exists under GTEC, but partial accreditation means that, provisional accreditation means that even though the program has not been fully accredited, because you have applied and gone through some minimum or basic process, some minimum level of the process, maybe the step 1 or step 2, you are given a go-ahead to continue, okay? So perhaps there could be, if there isn't, something like a partial accreditation or provisional accreditation pending the final accreditation by the board. That could be done again to reduce the time, but it is very important for that due diligence to be done before that new course is mounted by the university. Okay. I have seen someone who applied to do a PhD in the UK, apply for the PhD, and then the UK institution checked from GTEC whether the program was accredited, and the program was not accredited. You have wasted your time. So it shouldn't happen to the students. The student's interest is for me, is paramount, because they may not know that the program is not accredited because the institution is credible. And that is why it's important for us to situate the discussion within the quality assurance
perspective, right?
Of that.
Let me bring in Peter. So very valid point that Kofi makes, but I still have some questions in there. You're saying that it's not just a process, it's a quality assurance mechanism that we should follow. I'm sure everybody would agree with that. But why must it take so long? And doesn't this impede the entire enterprise? Because look, every course that is run in a university is like a project. When you do project management, they'll tell you there are ways of managing this. If for 3 years you're trying to get accreditation or re-accreditation, that project literally can be flushed down the toilet. Your take, Peter?
Yes, I agree with you. I don't still understand the reason why accreditation processes takes that long. But I think that there are internal mechanisms that checks the the validity of programs that are being run by universities. So with this, I will just limit myself to the public universities because, and even some of the private universities that have been around for some years now. Because if you have, after you've designed your program, it works through the various authorities in the university. It goes through your faculty, it goes through your college, and then it goes through the academic board. And at all these stages, the program is reviewed. They take a critical look at it. They want to assess the validity and the potency of the program to meet the needs of the university and by extension the whole country. So I'm thinking that by the time the program leaves the university to GTech, it has gone through some self review by the university. That should make it easier for GTech to quickly go through the documents and do what is necessary for the university to run it. And I'm talking about a situation where you have a new program that you want to start running. So if that is the case, and that is actually what happens on the university campuses, I don't think that GTech should take a longer period in accrediting such programs so that the programs would start running. I think that the reason why when the program document leaves the university campus, sometimes the university is tempted to run some of these programs is that they believe that they have done a lot of quality checks on the document that is going out, and it will be very, very difficult for, and speaking for the public universities specifically, because the private ones, I don't have much knowledge about how they go about it. But with the traditional public universities, this is what it goes through. So the academic board would have to approve your program before it's even allowed to leave the university to go to the national, the GTech. Now, if that is the case, they feel that, I'm thinking that they feel that the document have gone through enough processes for it to be advertised before, although it's not supposed to be the case. And I think that is what has led to this. And GTech would take a longer period to accredit the program. And all these things, you know, you are in a university, you are looking for funds, you want students, you have staff that you need to also get on various assignments. And at the end of the day, the country also wants to increase their tertiary enrollment ratio. So all these things come into play, and you will be tempted to run it. So I think that it's more to do with the efficiency of GTech and the whole accreditation process, how to streamline it, so that because it has gone through these processes within the university, and these consultants come from the university, so sometimes they know what they want. So when the documents are approved by the academic board to be sent to accreditation, to be sent for accreditation, I think it should take like 1 or 2 months for them to quickly put up a team, and then they come to the universities to inspect what they need to inspect. Then they can ask officers, give them a provisional something so that they can start running. Because you can't design a program and wait for 2, 3, 4 years before you implement it. Then what use would it be? Because by the time it gets to the 4th year, new things have come and you would have to update it. Then the thing becomes useless. So I think they need to streamline some of these because they have these internal mechanisms within the public universities. The accreditation process should not even take more than a month for it to be done.
And you know, speaking about this brings to mind the issue of accreditation in the sphere in which I operate, law, legal studies. And once, you know, a few years ago, how we're told that a lot of these institutions didn't even have the right accreditation or the requirements basically to run law programs in the country. But then again, you would look at, do these institutions have the requisite, for example, libraries, facilities, lecturers, courses that they are running? You see, these are some of the specific problems. But coming back to what we're discussing, you talk about the fact that the universities sometimes are tempted because they have run their own quality checks, and before they put them out there, you would expect that the University of Ghana, for example, would do a lot of work before sending it to the NAB or the GTech. But the law clearly states, Section 36 of Act 1023, that is the Education Regulatory Boards Act 2020 states clearly. It provides that a person who runs or advertises a tertiary program that is not accredited commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not less than 10,000 penalty units and not more than 20,000 penalty units, or a term of imprisonment of not less than 15 years or not more than 20 years, or to both. Yet they are doing it. Is it the law that is not working, or is it that because of the flaws in the system, the universities are being allowed to go through with murder? Because like Kofi said, in the end, it is the student who bears the brunt of it all.
Well, I think that for a law to work, the processes that leads to the obedience of that law should also be so streamlined, so smooth that it becomes easier for people to obey such laws. And I'll give you an example. You have a program designed, you need to run the program within the next year. You've gone through your quality checks internally, you send it to accreditation, and they are taking like 2-3 years for them to even come to campus to inspect the resources that you have before they accredit you. You'll be tempted to do what you are not supposed to do. I'm not saying it's right. No, it is not the right thing to do. But the processes that leads to the accreditation of programs should be looked at critically if we want to. And I think that's the reason why they are not able to enforce some of these laws. Because once you accredit an institution, you have given the institution a lot more authenticity to allow the institution to do some of the things that they are doing. Then you need to accredit their programs. Then they bring the programs to you, and you are taking 3 years, 4 years to accredit the program. So what are you expecting the institutions to do? You have accredited me to run programs. I bring my programs, and you are taking 3-4 years. It means that for the 3-4 years, I'm not going to admit students. I might have hired academic staff, but they cannot work, but I have to pay them.
So the system being run by the NAB, by GTech, is impractical for now. It's impractical. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think that because there are internal mechanisms, and I will continue to refer to so that people don't get me wrong, with the public universities, because there are internal mechanisms, and most of these consultants comes from these universities, I think that they should streamline the process so that by the time the document gets out of the university to NAB, it should take roughly like 1 to 2 months for them to at least issue a provisional certificate, for them to start running, advertising the program, and then start running it. Then they can take all the time that they need to do whatever they want to do, visit the campus and other things. And then they can finally give them a full accreditation. I doubt if there has been a situation whereby a public university have designed a program, they have gone through the academic board of the university and have gone out and the program has been rejected. I stand to be corrected, but I don't foresee such a thing.
That's why I have the problem.
Right.
You see, the issue of outdated industry irrelevant curriculum in our tertiary institutions exists. And it has existed all this while, even though there have existed academic boards in all our tertiary institutions. You understand? So that alone should tell us that there is a need for that external oversight. Because if the internal oversight were to be enough,
right,
there wouldn't have been a situation where a university is running a program that is not industry relevant, because the university has an academic board that may have verified or validated the content. What I see to be what was in the mind of the connoisseurs of this particular law was that as the demand for tertiary education was increasing, both along public and private lines, and note that most of these public institutions have a lot of private institutions under them, working through affiliations and all that. It was necessary to have a law that regulates, the delivery, of training, and also how institutions were springing up. I appreciate that after passing the law, there is a vacuum. The law hasn't still an LI. There's still no LI for the education regulatory bodies law, which is one of the key issues the tech is facing. In addition to that, the processes will have to be streamlined to give effect to the law. It is one common issue with our public service. Sometimes resource constraints, sometimes especially human resource constraints, sometimes systemic, red tapes delay and ends up negating the essence of the institutions. And so it is important that for us to achieve or get to the point where no institution exists unaccredited and no program is run unaccredited, we must create an enabling environment at the regulatory side of things to ensure that systems are streamlined to support compliance of tertiary institutions to the regulatory law. That is also very, very important.
Okay, so as of now, clearly we do not have that. Can you just give me a yes or no answer?
Obviously, we have challenges with the system. As I mentioned, if there was no challenge, GTech wouldn't ask universities to apply for reaccreditation 1 year before the expiration.
Right.
It means that at least it will take 1 year, and that is not global best practice.
All right. So we also admit that these university academic boards are not infallible. So it would have been interesting to know, for example, whether any of these public institutions, the major ones, had ever put through programs, for consideration that had been rejected. Then we would have a basis to say that, well, sometimes the quality controls in the institutions don't match up to the standards that are required by the GTech, for example. But I want both of you gentlemen to reflect on what Solomon Nunu of the University Teachers Association of Ghana said in response to some of these developments. He is also laying part of the blame at the doorstep of the National Accreditation Board. Let's listen to what he had to say.
What happens oftentimes is that the person or the institution might have submitted their documents for accreditation and then it may be delaying. So sometimes that causes some of these infractions to occur because for this particular report also, I must admit that I've not read the report to know that are they referring to new programs or they are referring to existing programs. More often than not, these problems arise as a result of problems associated with existing programs. So there's an existing program, the person has, the program is already running. So you have now submitted your documentation for it to be reaccredited. However, JTech, by virtue of the problems with their staffing, also may struggle in order for them to be able to get people to come to the place and review the programs as expected. So in a situation whereby they are unable to send the people, you also cannot say that the students who are in school should be sent home. So sometimes the issue has to do with problems with staffing at JTech, which seems to be they seem to be running on a very, very lean staff. And so sometimes these problems arise. But I don't think it's something that is unsurmountable. I think quickly JTech needs to organize and then send persons to these places once they have received the documents or the application for reaccreditation from the affected institutions so that they can reaccredit the programs for us to keep running.
Valid points made by the president of UTAG. Gentlemen, I'll start with you, Kofi, and then move on to Peter. Very quickly, Kofi.
I think it's valid. It's a win-win. Both institutions, both categories of institutions have roles to play in ensuring that we give effect to the law. The implementer must create the enabling environment for the law to be respected by reducing the turnaround time for accreditation, especially for program accreditation, or most especially for both reaccreditation and accreditation. At the same time, too, public universities must not see themselves to be untouchable, quote unquote, because they are all government institutions. If that posture exists, then it will create a situation as if one group of people, are immune from the law. But when the same act is done by private universities, GTech will clamp down on them heavily. And so let's not create the impression that our public institutions, because they are government owned just like GTech, there is a level of laxity when it comes to enforcing the law. We urge GTech to make their processes very, very streamlined and very, very, very less cumbersome, and also apply a strict rule in enforcing the law in respect of whether institutions are public or private. That is the only way we can ensure that there is conformity. We also encourage the universities, both private and public, to accede to the processes and then work with the tech to, as much as practicable, make the process more very, very streamlined and less cumbersome, so that we can have a much more regulated tertiary space that meets in.
Peter, your quick take on that?
Yeah, I think there should be a 1 to 2 year grace period given to all tertiary institutions for them to submit all their documents that needs accreditation. And then GTEC can use these 1 to 2 years to clear everything. And then we all start on a clean slate.
All right, there's actually something that comes in there because per this report, management has been asked to, quote, liaise with the GTEC to take retrospective accreditations to cover all the non-accredited certificates issued to students. So it's going to be retrospective. It's almost like a wholesale pardon. You've already run these courses. Let's have a wholesale accreditation retrospectively of the non-accredited courses. And then maybe you could say your sins are forgiven. But in the interim, Peter, what does this mean? Does this invalidate currently the certifications that have been doled out, dispensed by the institutions? You remember Kofi was speaking of a student who applied for a program outside and couldn't because his program did not have accreditation by the GTEC. What does that mean?
Now, for me, it doesn't. It's a matter of the institution just working around the clock to get the programs accredited, and then GTEC can put it on their website. I don't think that anybody's certificate is going to be invalidated because the programs have not been accredited. I think what we also need to know is I think the president of UTAC said it, out of the programs that have been mentioned, how many of them need re-accreditation and how many of them need new accreditation. I think that will also give us an idea of what the implications are. But for me, no certificates is going to be invalidated because of this challenge. But I think after the grace period that has been mentioned by the Auditor General, maybe we should now be so strict on this and ensure, when we have streamlined the process, ensure that before new programs are run, the needed accreditation is given.
Do you agree with Peter, Kofi, especially when in that instance you cite the student may have suffered the penalty of not getting enrolled in a program or not getting a scholarship? The consequence may not just be, oh, we've now accredited you. It may be loss of time, effort, even money in getting into other programs across the world.
The balance between the human face and then the strict application of the law is very, very key. But we shouldn't throw away the law because it exists for a reason. As I said, what Peter mentioned applies to or should apply to re-accreditation.
Okay.
If a program wasn't previously accredited at all, and students have gone through the program and gotten certification, it cannot be a wholesale approval because that program is yet to be taken through the quality assurance test of the tech. And it is not certain that it will be approved. Same as it is not certain that...
Just hold it there for me. That is exactly what the report suggests. It suggests that let's do retrospective accreditation of all of these programs.
If the program was
that is what it's suggesting.
No, in the case of new accreditations, not re-accreditation, the program has not been taken through the quality processes of the tech in the past.
Okay, so you're focusing on new accreditation, not re.
After their due diligence, they can say that this aspect of the program is not complete, and so you need to add A, B, C, D, E units to this particular model to make it complete.
Right.
If that recommendation is made and you have already graduated students, you can't go ahead and give them certification unless they come and then do those units as part of those models. That's how it works. So the wholesale retrospective ones works easily for programs that are going through re-accreditation. But for programs that have not been accredited at all, you can never assume that a wholesale accreditation can be granted because of the human face, because the industry angle is very, very critical.
It's important you make that point, because per what we are seeing here, it says that it's going to take retrospective accreditation or dispense these to cover all the non-accredited certificates. So it creates a bit of murkiness whether it's going to be just re-accreditation, courses undergoing re-accreditation, or including courses that simply have had no accreditation in the first place.
Exactly, that distinction is very, very critical. These are recommendations of auditors. So if you talk to the tech people, you appreciate the differences between the two. One is more or less a formality, but when it is not re-accreditation, then you can't assume the outcomes even before the process starts.
All right. Let's look at another angle of the conversation. And I did mention before we kickstarted this conversation that we had run our own, checks. And one of what we gleaned was that there was a lot of corruption in the process. And that sometimes it is blatant, not the directors of these institutions. I'm talking about the NAB and the GTEC, but some in officialdom who will see through the process, blatantly asking for money before they go through the right processes and, of course, maybe facilitate people or institutions getting accreditation. Is this something you have come face to face with? Is this something you've heard? Is this something you know? Starting with you, Kofi.
I don't know about that, but I will not be too surprised. Okay, now, this is how corruption works within our civil service. Whenever there are excessive, bureaucracies, especially the artificial ones, artificial meaning that bureaucracies that are created just to make things difficult. Okay, they are not natural bureaucracies. What happens is that sociologically, people will like to move their things much faster through a very, very slow process. And by attempting to do so, people try to pay their way through. That is how come you see people paying to acquire passports, people paying to acquire licenses, and all that. It is not different when it comes to granting of accreditation. If the system is so long and I am a private school, private businessman, I have established an institution, everything works with time because I have a loan to pay. So if it's delaying, it is human nature, consistent with the practice within our public service, that such red tapes may lead to people trying to pay their way through the system and get things done much faster. What I do not know is specifically with respect to the granting of accreditation by the National Accreditation Board or the GTEC. That I do not know. But it is common practice within our public service that wherever there is bureaucracy, corruption festers.
Peter?
Yes, I also don't have any idea about what you are talking about. But as Kofi said, it's natural that when people are desperate, they find ways and means to get things done. And especially, I think this would be more associated with the private institutions and who need their programs accredited so that they can start running and get some students in the schools. And when the delays happen, definitely they would want to find ways and means to get their programs running. But I would have to even extend this and say that now it's going to be, if that is the case, then it's going to be serious now, because now the private universities that are coming up or the universities that are coming up are not going to go through any affiliation process by the new law. So now, before you are accredited to run, you will need to meet the highest standards that have been set for you to be able to run. And if that is what is happening there, then it means that now it's going to be serious, because now when the officers come, you need to satisfy everything before you are giving the go ahead to run your institution, to run your program and admit students.
All right. So to wrap off the conversation, gentlemen, I want you to give me your final thoughts, a clear roadmap in just a few points about the way forward, but also weave in this bit. The AG has recommended that these institutions with unaccredited programs should immediately stop running them to avoid, sanctions by the NAB. What is the way forward on that as well? I'll start with you, Kofi. You have a maximum of 1 minute to make your submission, each of you.
Well, I think that the programs cannot be truncated suddenly because of the situation that Peter explained and I have also explained. As for the sanctions, they can't avoid. Yesterday, the JTEC boss was clear that there are sanctions. The board is going to meet and prefer sanctions against all the institutions that have breached the law. So the sanctions will definitely come. So stopping it will not even prevent the sanctions. I don't think it should be stopped because of the interest of the students, especially for programs that are being re-accredited. But if the program is not accredited at all, they must stop because they might be wasting their time.
All right, Peter, final word.
Yeah, I think that the authorities at GTEC should have a second look at their processes and streamline it. In this time and age, they should be able to employ technology to work around some of these things so that we all save ourselves the headache and the stress of going through these accreditation programs and moving back to Accra, coming back to wherever you are for several times before your program is accredited. We just need to streamline this process and make it more friendly for institutions to work through as they are required to.
We're very grateful that you took the time to join us, gentlemen. Dr. Peter Anti, Executive Director, Institute for Education Studies, and of course, Kofi Asare with Africa Education Watch. Well, up next.